everybody. My name is Lee Allison. Welcome to the panel discussion for hiring for agility. We've been putting this together for, gosh, guys, I don't know what, a couple of months now since I first started chatting with each one of y'all about it. And I'm super excited about our topic today because everybody needs to get hired sooner or later. And especially in this day and date, getting your foot in the door for a job, or on the reverse side, understanding what it is that keeps a good agile hiring process in place is super critical. I don't necessarily need to convince anybody that who and when and how you do your hiring is a major critical piece of success to any sort of group effort whatsoever. And especially in the high stakes world of enterprise agility, these hires at any level, anywhere within your organization, can potentially either make or break the agility of people who are doing the actual work. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. I've got a group of people, friends and acquaintances and folks that I've had the pleasure of working with in various situations, who are going to be helping me out today. And let's go ahead and get a quick introduction from everybody. Adam Mattis is the partner and enterprise advisor at Scaled Agile. Adam, you want to give us your nickel bio here?
Yeah, hey everyone. Thank you definitely for jumping in here to learn about this topic. When we look at agile transformation as a whole, getting the right people on the bus is always the most critical first and continuing step. I've had the privilege of working in the space for a number of years, kind of by accident. I built and eventually divested my own consulting company before I had the opportunity to join Scaled Agile and really help direct where the Scaled Agile framework or SAFe is moving in the longer term. One of my areas of specialty is in what we term people agility. I'm currently in the process of completing a book around modern management theory to really go a few steps beyond Frederick Winslow Taylor's book that we've been following since the early 1900s. So there's a lot of really cool things coming out around how we manage knowledge workers, how we lead, and how we prepare to win in the post-digital economy. And it all comes down to the people.
Excellent. Now, also, I do want to put in a quick plug. Adam, you mentioned you had a PDF of that. So before we're done today, let's not forget to get that loaded into the Miro so that our participants can get that downloaded as well.
You got it, Lee.
Okay, fantastic. All right, next up, Jane Lakesek, Director of Recruiting and Technology at Tarvos. Jane, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Yes, I am Jane Lazak. I am the Director of IT Recruiting for Tarvos Talent. I've been in the staffing arena for going on 15 years now, and my passion is helping leaders hire. And the leaders that I serve are IT and engineering leaders, a lot of which have agile teams these days. So letting them focus on the key initiatives that they need to do, delegate some of the hiring process to me, and allow me to, help identify the talent and keep the talent too. It's not just identifying the talent, but also retaining the talent on their team. And that's what drives me and motivates me, is getting the right people in the right seats. So I'm excited to be here with you all today.
Thanks for attending. We appreciate your input. Okay, next up, Shane McDougall. And in case anybody's wondering, the order that I chose here for how I'm introducing people, it's just the order that the folks provided me with their bio. That's it, nothing more. So Adam was the first one to get me the bio info. So Shane, you're up next. Shane McDougall and I have known each other for quite a few years. He is the current Agile practice lead at North Star Solutions Group. Shane, you want to say hi?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks for the introduction. Lee and I go way back. We were one of the founding members of the Austin Agile Mentoring Peers Group. I think we started that about 7 or 8 years ago. I'm a former engineering manager who has worked at several startups. I've gone public twice. I've been lucky enough to work with some really sharp individuals in the past. Speaking, kind of echoing what everybody else is talking about, it's about the people on the bus. I've been practicing Agile coaching for about the past 8 years, and like Lee said, I'm the practice lead for North Star Solutions Group. We are a consulting firm that can do placement as well as you can handle this entire projects. If you're if you're an entrepreneur or you're a small company and you don't have an engineering team yet, but you want to get something off the ground, we can probably help you out and build you an MVP and then transition that back to you.
Beautiful. That's a valuable experience these days when, you know, everybody needs to have their IT intellectual property out there and available, right?
Right. Working software trumps everything, right?
It does, absolutely. Number one metric of any team, are you producing useful, functional software that provides value to the business at a reasonable clip? If so, leave the team alone. Let them do their thing. That's a valuable thing, right? Okay, and last but certainly not least, Marta Chodowski. Marta and I have known each other for quite a few years as well, and she is currently the Senior Technical Recruiter of Software Engineering for Indeed, Indeed.com. So Marta, why don't you say hi?
Yeah. So hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I've been working in recruiting space for the last 14 years and almost 9, solely focusing on software engineering and infrastructure side. Worked for several companies here in Austin and had the pleasure to build quite a few Agile teams. So definitely see a huge value in Agile and you know what this is doing to the market, and pleasure to be here and happy to help and answer any questions that any of you might have.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the meat of the conversation here. Thanks everybody for the intros. Now I want to be clear, there is a very, very large and much talked about topic within our industry wherein we're taking Agile practices, specifically Kanban and Scrum themselves, and applying them to the hiring process. I'm perfectly okay if we chat about that, but the bigger focus here is not applying Agile to the hiring process. I really want to focus our discussion today on what makes a great Agile hire. These days, especially with SAFe or Scrum at Scale or any of the larger scaling initiatives that have been going on for several years now, we as an industry are coming to the realization that your Agile coach and your Scrum Masters are not the only ones who contribute to your agility. It is everybody up and down the org chart who can either make or break enterprise level or organizational agility. So that's really what we're focusing on. And the first question that I want to talk about, or the first segment, is let's talk about resumes. The first part of the hiring process is at some point, either the hiring manager or the HR people or the recruiters are going to be facing a mountain of resumes about yay big, probably, especially in this environment. So folks, I want to put it out to y'all. What makes a great resume? What is it that gets that resume to pop in your mind and get it to the top of the stack? What are you looking for?
Lee, I guess I'll jump in first, and I'll speak from the perspective of when I was leading a practice at a 600,000 person global consultancy. So as you can imagine, the resume that I want to see is often not the same resume that gets filtered through the AI filtration mechanisms, right? So there's the resume that the large systems for the large companies expect to see, containing keywords and all of those things. And then there's the resume that I actually want to see as a human, right? I mean, and that's a good problem to solve. And if any of you Austin area technologists want a really cool project, if you can figure out how to humanize that AI process so that the resumes we see reflect the people, not just the keywords, that'd be great. So when I get a resume in front of me, what I expect to see, or what I hope to see, is something that reflects who the person actually is. What did you actually do? Not just the keywords that you think I want to see, but what's your story? How did you get to where you're at? What have you learned over the years? And really show me through that you understand what it means to be Agile, that you understand that we value experimentation, that we value not just continuous improvement, but relentless improvement. Have you invested in yourself? Have you invested in others? And then also, depending on specifically what the role is, how have you grown in your profession? So for example, if you're an engineer, I think, looking at my panel mates, we can all agree that if we stopped learning the day we graduated college, not one of us would be employed today. So I
never graduated college, so I really wouldn't be here. So.
Okay, well, I feel that too, Lee. You are a definite lifelong learner. But how
without a doubt.
how do you reflect that? How can you convey that to whoever's making the hiring decision? When we look at the post-digital world, that ability to learn new skills fast and also focus on deep technical work are probably two of the most valuable skills that an individual can have, and they're really hard to list in a typical skills section.
Okay. Who else would like to weigh in on that? Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
I could jump in. I completely agree in the sense of, well, to kind of back up a little bit, Lee, I hope that the people that I'm working with don't get the stack of resumes, because that's where I come into play and try to narrow that down and make sure that they're only seeing, the top few candidates for the roles.
I see Ashley nodding her head in sympathy with that, right?
But with that, the getting around the AI systems, seeing what's on the resume, to me, it's all about, what have you accomplished? Where do you want to go? What action verbs have you used to describe the things that you've done? I'm trying to think what other things come to mind automatically, but those are some of the key pieces. And then the communication, like making sure that you can communicate effectively in your resume, because so much of being in an agile team is being able to communicate to your peers, to your leaders. And so how you communicate in that resume is really important as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's start a little bit of notes up here. I'm hearing lifelong learning and communications. Okay, Marta?
I to also look at, I's versus we. That's a big one for me. Is it something that a particular person actually has done, or were they just a part of the team, where the observers were actually, taking an active part? That's a big one for me. I see a lot of resumes very much so focusing on the we, which is kind of a little bit of a yellow flag for me as a recruiter personally.
Gotcha. I was talking with some hiring managers just last week, and one of the things that one of the hiring managers said was, candidate XYZ, everything that they're saying is all about them as opposed to their teams, and that's a red flag.
Okay, yeah, I think it's got to be a good mixture of both, right?
Good mixture.
Just to kind of riff off, it's for example, a good pattern would be something like, we were struggling with X and I implemented Y to solve the problem, right? So you kind of want to try to find that balance of I's and we's, right?
Okay.
And again, with the AI thing, it's just to kind of riff off what Jane was saying. I think the action verbs are important. It's, if your resume doesn't have the word experiment in it, it probably shouldn't make it through my own personal AI. Right.
Well, but
it's just one of those things where it's like, we tried this, or, we achieved autonomy by, running these experiments. I think it's really one of those, the action verbs, things like empowered, removed obstacles, and then, just to kind of, I don't know if anybody really touched on this, but what I'm looking for when I'm looking at resumes are not so much are they a culture fit. Of course, they need to be a culture fit. You'll learn that through the verbal dialogue with these folks, but really, is the culture you have now the culture you want? Or are you looking for somebody that can change that culture? You want to kind of try to find that mixture of transformation, but at the same time playing well with others within my organization. So you kind of want to do a double-edged sword of, do they fit our current culture, and can they help us take our culture to the next level?
I think one thing you want to be careful of with that, and this is when we start talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we need to also be careful that we're not inadvertently bringing a kind of unconscious bias to the table, because kind of to what Shane's saying, it's the culture we have be the culture that we want. And sometimes the culture that we need is neither one. So a lot of the enterprise clients that I've been working with are really striving to better understand their customers. And if, for example, you're a company based in San Antonio and everyone that you hire lives in San Antonio and your customer base is diverse across the entire US, well, it's really hard for somebody, no matter what their background is, who spent their entire life in San Antonio to empathize with people based in Anchorage, Alaska, or in Miami, for example. So sometimes it's, as a hiring manager, really doing your best to put yourself outside of what's comfortable in terms of culture, to think about, not just what fits with us today, not what we want to move away from, but who do we really need to be to best represent our customer in terms of the people who are making decisions about what the customers are going to be using, doing, et cetera.
Right. Yeah. And that empathy is a huge part of what, in my opinion, should be driving hiring decisions. You know, and in fact, Adam, you were talking about physical locality. We've got another question down here. In this day and age, does physical location still matter? Well, let me restate the question. My apologies. Does physical location still matter to the agility of the hire, the agility of the position?
Lee, I'll quote my shirt and every consultant in the world and just say, it depends.
It depends.
I mean, I think the answer is that it could not matter at all, or it could matter a great deal, just depending on the problem that you're trying to solve.
Okay.
To kind of add on to that, I think that Agile Scrum teams and engineering product development teams have been doing this co-locate or remote working thing for a lot longer than most corporate cultures have, and so it depends on what phase of the evolution you're in, right? I think co-location is still important for leadership, and I don't know why I feel that way. I feel like the VPs and the executive guys still need to be able to go, and if they can't whiteboard, it's different for them to go whiteboard virtually than it is to them sitting in a boardroom talking about ideas, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I see the most struggle is how do you get the leadership to continue to collaborate when they're not used to it? Your Agile teams are used to having one or two guys being remote or an offshore team or whatever, right? But it's the inputs into those teams and the alignment that you get above that I see the most area for improvement for co-location. As far as the teams go, I've been working with remote teams for years.
Right. The very first job once I got out of the military had remote teams involved with it, and they were, believe it or not, way back then, just as much of a pain in the backside. You know, that co-location is a degradation in communication. One of the principles upholding the Agile Manifesto is face-to-face conversations are the best way to get information into and out of a team. Now, we're technically doing face-to-face, but I think that we all understand as well, once we've gone virtual, we lose a little bit of fidelity. Maybe not a ton, but Adam and Shane, I appreciate your input. And Shane, yeah, I think maybe the rules are a little bit different for senior leadership. I think it's also contextual as well. Marta, Jane, input?
From talking to leaders in the organizations that I work with here locally, it seems like their biggest challenge with not being in person is problem solving. So, you know, when a problem comes up, it's different being able to just turn to your neighbor or walk down the hall and have those conversations versus is the person on chat? Are they replying to chat? Are they, can we just go into the room and whiteboard it out? So that's the biggest challenge that has come up, but, I think it's also things that can be overcome depending upon what the challenges are and things like that. This is in a way still new to some people. So
absolutely.
Well, if I can just tell you guys about Indeed, I mean, we're fully remote till July of 2021, and our employees actually can choose to be remote for the rest of their career on Indeed. So that is bringing another dynamic. And now you like it or you don't like it, you're going to have to work virtually, right? So we're looking at the folks that can actually adapt to that environment and adapt to teams that are sitting in multiple locations in different time zones. And there's actually a possibility you're never going to be really able to see these folks in person ever. So are you open to that? How is that impacting your way of conducting business, right?
I like your question there. Is the candidate open to 100% remote? Because you're right, Marta. Some people are going to look at that and go, heck yeah, let's dance. I'm in on it. But then there are other people that's just not their gig for whatever reason. That's not the way they want to play. So that's good input. I like that. Cool.
And then for those of us that are doing scaled Agile, just throw another wrench in there. Like, how's PI planning going with 100 people on a Zoom?
Yes.
I'll throw devil's advocate at that and say that a lot of our clients, and ourselves included, there's definitely some things that you miss, but there's also some really significant advantages that we've seen to doing things remote. So when we do it online, for example, it's a lot easier to reach people. It's a lot easier to find information. I mean, there's definitely things that we miss, but there's been a lot of enterprises that have seen a lot of success and a great increase in engagement by having that option to do things online.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. It comes down to your team's ability to adapt to a new tool set and a new, vaguely, slightly new communication pattern as well. Those things have to be there.
Lee, I think that's a good point. And I'm going to pull on one of your words for a moment, and that's, you talk about resiliency. So I think for this conversation that we've had for the last 4 or 5 minutes, I've been sitting back and kind of thinking about some of the large multinationals that I've worked with, and thinking about, for example, how dispersed their leadership teams are. So for example, if you're like a Boeing and you've got senior leaders all across the world, or you're a FedEx and you've got the leaders of different operating groups all across the country, that's just been their culture since day one. So no matter online or not, that's been a challenge they've had to solve. But then you think about other organizations where, we do have the luxury of finding the people that we need right down the hall, or we do have the culture that allows us to collaborate. And I've also seen organizations where, you get 5 peers in a room and nobody wants to talk to one another because they're in such hard competition with one another for the next promotion that they just won't collaborate.
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to a few things when we talk about physical location. It's what's the culture that we have, how resilient are we to change, and what do we know from our history? So I think it'll be interesting to see when we get back to the world after all of this. We've all built a brand new muscle for resiliency in terms of how we communicate and how we interact and how we seek out information. How is that going to make us better and more flexible as we go into the next phase of whatever the world looks like?
Yeah, and let's not forget the undoubtedly obvious positive of being able to attend meetings in your pajama bottoms. So, what's not to love for that? I am not polling anybody here on the con call of who's in PJs and who's not in PJs. So, maybe for 2021 and beyond, the new business suit is top half only. Maybe there's got to be like a joke or a skit there.
They call it the business mullet.
Okay, that's worth the price of admission right there. I love it. That's fantastic. Okay, let's talk for just a minute about what experience and what cert do y'all look for in your resume. Feel free to call out specific certs that you always look for. We're going to avoid trashing on any of the certs that aren't as contributory as others. But if you've got a solid one, obviously I'm a safe practitioner, so I love all the safe certs. I think Adam is probably on board with that as well. What experience?
Let me lead that off with a blanket statement that's Adam's opinion on certifications, right? So certification without experience isn't valuable.
No.
And if you look at certification as validation, those are two very different things, right? So I think it's important, no matter what the certification is, to see that people have invested in their learning. But then what's also important is what have you done with it since you've had it? So for example, when you say safe credentials, you think of an SPC. Somebody that last Tuesday had 0 experience in safe and then went to implementing safe training and is now an SPC has knowledge, but what they're going to lack is experience. And they're not the same as, say, a career consultant who has been an SPC for 10 years, or that's not, I guess you couldn't have been an SPC for 10 years, let's say 5.
Roll with it. We're with you there.
Sure. That's been an SPC for 5 years and has been launching release trains for 5 years. Those are very different people. And then I look at Dean, and I know he mentioned yesterday that when we were talking that, he's been working in this way for a lot of years, but he doesn't have his SPC. So I think it's important to understand that the credential represents a certain level of knowledge. It represents an aptitude to maybe go out and learn, but also what have you done with it since you've had it? And that's, I think, applicable to any certification that you might have.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I look at contradictory certs, not necessarily contradictions, but like if you're a PMP and a scaled agilist, it's like, well, where do you borrow your strengths from? And then where have you implemented them, right? It's not that they're contradictory, but like, typical Gantt chart, waterfall-y, PMP, traditional PMPs. There's nothing wrong with PMP. Waterfall is a good solution for certain projects.
Sure.
But if they're loaded up with all of them, and then you look at the work history and it's well, are you doing Agile? It's so I always look to see if they have, I don't know if necessarily diversity of certifications is what I'm saying, but like sometimes those things are pulling against each other.
Okay, makes sense. As somebody who holds a PMP and an SPC, I can say for myself, the PMP allows me to be able to convince a potential employer or customer, I can talk to your PMO and I can understand what they can say or what it is that they're saying. Personally, and I'll just put this on the table, I got my PMP because I was tired of my resume being filtered out by the AI. And that's the only reason I got it. And the test was so hard, I will take that cert to my grave. I will never not have that cert because it was a pain in the backside to get it, right?
So as a recruiter, I can tell you that one of the things I ask, I want to know what's behind you getting this certification. I want to know if this is something that you were super interested in. I want to know if this was dictated by your company, by your team. I want to know the quest.
Okay.
And I also want to know
nice. The story behind the cert.
Yes, and that's how that changed your day-to-day work. What impact did that have on you, on your team, on the projects you were working on? That kind of tells me, okay, is this person currently working with this, or is just another certification to put on their resume to get filtered in, right? Or out, depending on the situation.
Hey, I had the hours to get the PMP, so I'd done the project management work, but PMP is just such a pervasive requirement for anybody in the project space, whether you're Agile or Waterfall. Even today, you still see it on a lot of requests. Okay, let's talk real quickly. I think Adam's already taken a shot at this one, but bust your favorite certification myth. What is a myth about certifications that just doesn't pan out in hiring?
Certification does not equate expertise.
Okay, very good.
100% with Adam on that.
Okay. Jane, Shane?
Completely agree. In the certs don't equal expertise. And I do like what Marta said earlier about, understanding why someone's getting the certification, because if it was, it goes back to like that lifelong learning piece where if the company dictated them getting it versus them seeking it out on their own, it's two different motivations, right? It's the motivation of the company versus the motivation of the candidate. So just because they have a certification doesn't necessarily mean that they're a continual learner and a lifelong learner. You have to go into the whys behind it. And
intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators is what we're talking about at that point.
And just kind of riff off what Jane was saying, who paid for it? Right?
Well, follow the money.
Follow the money. Did you come out of your own pocket to go pay for that $2,000 cert? Or did you sit down on a class because your company hired some guy to come in and do a pitch and you got your course and you sat in a class for 2 days?
Yeah.
I think it goes to the motivation, right? That's true with, AWS certifications and things like that too. But yeah, as far as like the cert myth, I've known product owners that have had the cert and they could not write a story.
Ooh, that's a bit of a myth.
And
they can speak the words, but when it comes to as a blah, I want to do blah so I can see blah benefit. They struggle, and I don't know if it's an empathy thing, but it just doesn't. Just because you're a certified product owner, doesn't mean you can provide good inputs to a team. That experience has to come with it, right? You have to take your lumps. Some younger product owners have to learn lessons the hard way with their teams when their teams reject their stories and say they're not ready. There's a learning that happens there that you're not going to get in a cert.
Yeah.
It's, you have to tailor it to your teams.
And I think we can apply that to any position, not just product owners, not to pick on the POs or anybody like that. I've seen one of my very first Scrum Masters that I ever worked with, the second week on the job, I walked in and she's stomping up and down the aisles, literally screaming at people because they weren't doing Scrum effectively. And I'm brand new to the role. And I'm like, that's not how you do that. Sure enough, about a week and a half later, her boss agreed that's not how you do that. And she got promoted to customer. So All
Well, it's
right.
you know, the same thing with like Scrum Masters, right? How do you run your retro?
Mhm,
How are you at problem solving?
mhm.
You know, that it's so, you know, a lot of times it's if they say they have the cert, you kind of have to reinforce that with a probing question on, well, tell me about your last retro,
Yeah,
or tell me about the most effective action item that came out of a retro in the past 90 days,
good stuff. Good
or
stuff.
something like that, right?
So this is something that we're trying to actually evolve the conversation on as well, because obviously learning is our business, right? It's Scaled Agile. We focus on developing knowledge, but what we're trying to also do is take it beyond just that knowledge you get in class to create that continued learning journey. So through the community platform, so if you are, as Shane mentions, like that brand new product owner who was trained on the role of product ownership, you don't necessarily have um, the knowledge or the background or the expertise yet. So one of the things that we're trying to provide people, no matter what the role is with access to on-demand learning and tools and templates
Mhm,
to help you be successful in that role. So for example, if as a PO, I attend class, I do all of that, I now have access to the community platform where I can say, all right, we're going into backlog refinement. How do I do that? So there'll be like a video, there's a checklist, there's templates, all of the things to help you be more successful day one in your job, especially if you're just transitioning, right? So if your job 2 weeks ago was business analyst, and then you started to go into the transformation, well, you don't just magically grow new people and new skills in that 2 week time frame. We have to educate and inform and transition the people that we have to be effective in the role. And I think we can all recognize that that's a journey. So the learning is step one. The continued education and coaching from the consultants like yourself is another step, but then also having that self-serve learning and continued learning is a really big part of what we're trying to offer the community members as well, so that you're not just taking a class and then left to your own devices.
Right. So let me ask one more follow-on question, and then we're going to move into the interview itself, because that's a really juicy piece of conversation right there. A question. So we're really leaning in on certs are good, but certs without experience are kind of a non-starter. There are a large number of people I talk with them on a week-to-week basis that have semi-relevant background experience or directly relevant, but they've never done the job of either product owner or scrum master before. If you were a hiring manager, how would you get those people to a position where you could rely on their skill sets and give them the job?
So Lee, are you asking if we were hiring a product owner and the product owners that we were presented had no experience as product owners?
Basically, or how could you help somebody to get their foot in the door?
Here's something that might help a little bit as well. In the era of COVID, we've had some layoffs, we've had some downsizes, and so what has happened is a lot of people have taken that opportunity to go get their cert while they're down. And so, there's a lot of people that have spent, that have had a free month and went out and, and spent their time on getting a class to help, beat through the AI or get through the algorithms just so they can, get a better shot. But at the end of the day, they don't have the experience. And so adding on to, just because it's time relevant, kicking it back to Lee, it's what do you do with the person that, maybe they've been a traditional project manager, they got downsized, now they've got a PO or a PM cert. How can you translate that, or is there a
Yeah,
translation?
yeah, that's good. Good restatement. Thank you, Shane.
I think one of the things I would look for is, so with any of these roles, it's not a blind transition, right? You can't be
Right.
role X, get laid off, go to class, now be qualified to do the other role. Just like anything else, if you're, just coming into an industry or a field, we would expect some sort of experience or some sort of, I guess, drive to get it, right? So there's a lot of places where you can volunteer. There's open source projects. Like there are places where you can get internships. There's a lot of ways to get that experience before you get the role. I think, especially when you talk about the competitive nature of hiring, I mean, I would be reluctant to make an external hire for a critical role like a product owner who has no product ownership experience. However, the caveat to that would be if I was working for a large enterprise and we were maybe going through a transition and there were some people who had knowledge of the system, who had a strong social network within the organization, and maybe your division was having a reduction in force. If you had the network, if you had the tribal knowledge, you had the enterprise expertise, I would be a lot more likely to invest in you to give you those skills, because that social network that you have is now offsetting the skills that you don't. But if you come in off the street and you're going to take, you're brand new to the role, you're brand new to the concepts, you're brand new to the company. Well, now I'm not just teaching you how to navigate the organization, but I'm also teaching you how to do your job.
Yep.
So I think that there's a balance there.
I think so too. I just recently accepted a position as Enterprise Agile coach for these fine people here, NetSpin. And one of the very first questions that was put into my lap was, hey, we have 2 people who just got their Scrum Master certification. They're engineers. They played on a Scrum team, but they're not Scrum Masters. How can we inoculate, or not inoculate, how can we cultivate these people and bring them along? And I've actually taken a couple of my more experienced Scrum Masters, and I said, I'm putting you in charge of mentoring these people, help them job shadow, help them work up. And now I'm starting conversations with senior leadership. Hey, in another couple of months, when we get another Scrum Master position open, let's consider an internal promotion for one of our experienced Scrum Masters and bring one of these people or both of these people in as a Scrum Master 1. And get them, with the proper coaching and the proper guidance, get them skilled up into the position that they want to be. So that's our strategy there, or at least that's what we're aiming for.
I don't know, not everybody's the same, but wouldn't that engineer take a pay cut to be a Scrum Master?
It depends on a couple of different things, but I don't know about anybody else. I have on many occasions taken pay cuts so that I could get experience that I wanted or be in a position that I wanted to be in.
I would also think that it depends on the organization's maturity, right? So an unfortunate trend in many enterprises is the commoditization of the Scrum Master role. It's devalued. I can say for us, we definitely pay for quality Scrum Masters, and it's an investment well made. I think when you look at the career grading, it would depend on the skill of the engineer, right? If you're maybe an Angular engineer going to be a Scrum Master 1, you're probably going to take a pay cut. If you're an AI engineer going to be a Scrum Master 1, probably so. But I think a lot of engineers and enterprises, when you look at the pay ladder, it's not going to be that different if the role of the Scrum Master is valued in the way that we would expect the role to be valued. Yeah. If you're trying to build a role with a body to just say you have Scrum Masters and you're going for the least expensive people on the market, then that's probably also representative of your Scrum practice.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to get what you pay for. I guess what I was more curious about was when you're going through the interviewing process, kind of resetting and reframing the conversation around, what made you good as an engineer might not necessarily make you good as a Scrum Master. The skill sets are varied. I don't know a lot of socially outwards engineers historically, and there's a huge social network that you have to build up as a Scrum Master. They have to buy into your trust, not because you're the smartest person in the room, because they believe in you and you've got their back, right? So I think it's just, when you're going through that transition, trying to reframe the expectations of what made you good over here isn't necessarily going to make you good over here, in the different roles.
Translatable skill sets is what we're talking about, and that's a great observation. I appreciate the heck out of that. And it's also a great segue for us to formally switch over and start talking about the interview process itself, okay? So on the Miro board, I've moved us over to the big interview. And let's start with top center first. In an actual interview, whether it's virtual, remote, face-to-face, whichever, what is your go-to question for trying to determine whether or not these people are actually really agilists, the kind of people you're looking for? Is it a specific question? Is it a skill set? What is the smell test that you're looking for?
I think I always look for the flexibility in an individual, the ability for someone to realize that, things can change, and being able to prioritize and say no to certain things, but also have the flexibility that, hey, yeah, I know we said we were going to do this, next sprint, but this came up and it's more important and more urgent and a higher priority. So how well are they at being flexible? I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I look for.
That's a good one.
I just want to talk about what they're currently doing, and I want to see everything. I want to see if they communicate effectively, if they can facilitate. I want to see what kind of attitude they have, if they're transparent. I want to see if they want to empower their team, and if so, in what ways. I want to hear examples of it. I want to see if they're a team player. I also want to see how protective they are of their own ideas. This is somebody that it's okay with that idea being wiped off the board, or is there going to be some ownership problems and issues? Here are examples of that. Also I want to see if this person is able to mentor and coach. If so, I want to see examples of it. If they're able to adapt quickly, change their mindset based on some evidence behind it, things like that.
Okay.
I go very into what they're currently doing, what they've done in the past. They can demonstrate pretty much all of those things.
Okay.
I can say I definitely rely on people like Jane and Marta to validate technical skill and ability. By the time I talk to somebody, I mostly assume that they have those things.
Mm-hmm.
And my go-to, and if you're ever in an interview with me, this will be the first thing I ask you is, and that's to tell me your story. Who are you? What gets you excited and what got you here? And if all you're doing is regurgitating the job post to me, well, that's going to be an interesting note. But I want to know, what's your story? A lot to what Marta said. Have you shown resiliency to change? Have you shown the ability to adapt and overcome to challenging circumstances? Are you willing to learn? Are you a good communicator? And I often find that, a person's ability to tell a compelling and concise story of who they are tells a lot about them, as a professional and as a person.
Okay.
Yeah, just to kind of riff off what Adam was saying, I've got good hiring people that do some excellent job screening before they get to me. So by the time they get to me, I get the luxury of just asking them really poignant questions. And so one of my go-to questions is, tell me about a time where you pushed against existing process and how'd it go? Oh, this is how we do it here. Okay, well, tell me about a time where you challenged that. Tell me about a time where you said, hey, this is wasteful. I can show you. Here's some quantifiable data points that show you that this process you have in place is wasteful. Or questioning FUD. A lot of companies have fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it's like, well, why can't we push this code out every day? And tell me about a time where you tried to fight that up the ladder, right? So it's really about, I don't want to say challenging because it's not, we're on the same team. But it's really, tell me about a time where you've pushed against the grain and how did it go?
Okay.
I mean, sometimes you'll have wins, sometimes you won't, but
Sure.
It shows me that they're willing to stick their neck out and take some risks and ask the hard questions of the people that employ them.
Good. To me, questions like that are really wrapped up in kind of, excuse the phrasing, but show me your cojones. Show me that you understand when you need to draw a line in the sand and when not to. And then how did you get through that line in the sand without alienating people, without burning bridges? Agilists rarely have direct lines of command where they can just walk into somebody's desk and go, start doing this. That's not how we work. We work via influence and by establishing ourselves as values-driven people. That's the coin that we trade on. So I need to know that the candidates can choose a hill to maybe not die on, but at least a hill worth fighting for. And then how do you do that once you're there? All right, good info. Let's see. T-shaped people. We all know the phrase. We need folks who are broad across a wide skill set and deep in one or two. How broad? How wide? What's too broad for you?
So this is something that's really interesting. I was working with Dean Leffingwell last week, and we were actually talking about this. And on our team right now, we're hiring an engineer, and we're a pretty large to mid-sized startup still. And one of the things that we always look for is what aptitude do you have to take on different things and learn different things? So myself, for example, I've been an engineer. I've been a consultant. I owned a marketing firm. I produced a TV show, and I've also served in the military community. So my E-shaped skills are pretty deep. What that means is there's a lot of different conversations I can have with different people. And I think it really depends again on what the problem is you're trying to solve. If you're hiring specifically a COBOL engineer, and that COBOL engineer is going to be working in those mainframes for, the next 5 years, then I guess the breadth of their skills and their diversity is going to be a little bit different than if you are, one of the things I always like to see is somebody hiring for a full stack engineer. And, your ability to hire that full stack engineer with all of the exact skills that you need is like a needle in a haystack or worse. What I would expect to see is, have you demonstrated the ability to learn how the system works and a curiosity to figure out those interconnected elements? So that would be an example of T-shaped skills. And I think, breadth really depends on the person. Are your T-shaped skills so wide that you are never focused on anything? Or do you just have an interesting and diverse set of experiences that make up your life story? I can tell you, for example, I can help guide you through database conversions as well as I can in enterprise transformation, but neither one as efficiently as I can tell you how to get oil spots out of the motor pool in the pouring down rain. Diverse skill sets.
Yeah, that last one's a unique skill set. While I was in the Navy, I babysat and launched Tomahawk cruise missiles, and I have yet to find a corporation that has a cruise missile division. But when I do, I'm the guy. All right, I'm the guy. So
Raytheon Lee, you and I are both making a career jump. I'm going to work on non-line of sight cannons. You're working on Patriot missiles, and we're just going to cruise blowing stuff up to retirement.
There you go. I love it. I love it.
And don't forget, I was in artillery, so there's a third.
Yeah. So there's a
We
lot
have
of
a
experience in
conversation.
blowing crap up here. So that's good to hear.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a parallel into culture transformation. Do we just blow things up?
Could be.
To add on to the T-shaped people thing, I think that, again, it depends on the role. But when I'm looking at Scrum Masters and product owners, I want them to think about not just their team. I want them to think about the overall, your team is I hate to use the cog in a wheel thing, but you're one team of possibly 5 or 6 teams, right? If your team is doing great and there's 4 other teams that can't keep up with you, is that a good thing?
No.
Right?
Nope.
And so
you're overfed at that point.
Right. Either we're not challenging you enough, or, sometimes you have in some companies where they've got how they've split the teams up based on specializations. They've got a front end team, a back end team, a QA team, instead of having all those roles on one team. And so sometimes that's just the hand you're dealt, right?
Right.
But how do you think about the entire system? It's that systems thinking thing, going back to, Leffingwell's Scaled Agile, one of the top 10 principles is thinking about the entire system.
Yeah.
So when I think about T-shaped people, I think about, are you considering, when you're doing your scoping, are you considering the QA effort? Are you considering, sure, the coding might be real simple, move this line from here to here, but what kind of regression test is that going to take on your team? So when I look at the T-shape, I'm looking at, are they thinking about the entire system and not just the roles on their team, but the company as a whole? Because at the end of the day, we're all here to serve the customers.
Mm-hmm.
If the customers aren't being delighted, it doesn't matter what your burn down looks like.
Right. Yeah, it's too easy to find your competitor and start sending your purchase orders or your clicks or your customer loyalty program to competition. Jane, Marta, what do you guys think about T-shaped people? Give us some examples of too much T-shaped people, T-shapedness. What's the English? Help me with the English, by the way, because I just totally slaughtered it.
I would say as a good recruiter, you need to kind of dig into the situation, find out what the reasoning behind it is. Is this because somebody is super interested in a lot of different things and they're easy, they can pick up things at it and really kind of drive the process? This is because I don't know what I really want to do. So I kind of jump from one thing to the other, learn a little bit. Oh, I don't really like it. That makes me uncomfortable. Let me try something else. I think you really got to dig into that. That will tell you a lot. I know a ton of full stack engineers, they're good at a lot of different things and they're super strong at just about any front end and back end language. And then I have those who just couldn't quite figure out what was the right thing for them. So they touched a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but they really don't bring the essence to the table.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a matter of, with what the breadth is. Why sometimes I see it in, if an individual's worked in a large organization versus more of like a smaller size startup, the experience is different. They may have only been doing one job in that large enterprise company because that's how the team was set up. So it goes back to like their overall experience. Why did they work in some of the roles they worked in? Why did they take some of the jobs that they took? Why did they, what kind of environment is also the right environment for them? Because you could have scaled agile in, a variety of different companies, company sizes, etc. But some people just do better when there's more enterprise company or larger size company, and some people do better when they have to wear multiple hats and get their hands in a lot of different things. So
yeah, I definitely run into people who either through skill set or preference, I probably 50-50 of both. You can definitely tell by looking at somebody's resume whether they've spent all of their time in startups or whether they have veered more towards corporate America. For good or bad. That's definitely a thing that you can tell. And there are times and places when it's okay to cross those streams, but I think that there's times and places when you need somebody who knows how to navigate enterprise bureaucracy, or you need to find somebody who can break things quickly, or a little bit of both, right? Okay. Agile interviews, how are, in the age of COVID, how are y'all handling group interviews, either group candidates or group interviewees, either one?
My practice really hasn't changed except for the fact that the medium is different. We used to do, especially if we're interviewing for a scrum master or a product owner on a team, the people on the team interview the people, they're part of the process. And so once they've made it through the HR screen and they've made it through, the mid-tier management, whoever's funding it, screening, then we follow it up with a team meet. And so the people on the team actually interview the people. And so we will schedule, there used to be those marathon things where you go for an entire day and then bounce from meeting to meeting to meeting. We're not really doing that as much, but what we are doing is we are doing back-to-back meetings. In particular, where I'm at now, we've got a lot of people in Bangalore. And so we've carved out certain days that are interview days so that our teams can come in later and stay on longer to interview people across the pond. Just because the time differences, I think it's 12 and a half hours. And so we have Team Tuesdays where we try to consolidate those 3 and 4 hour interviews with the entire team on one day. So people have the expectation of they come in a little bit later that day and they stay later so they can interview people internationally. But it really hasn't changed that much. We still have, 2 or 3 back-end guys sit down with a person, and then 2 or 3 front-end people, and then 2 or 3 QA people, and that's 30 minutes apiece. So our process really hasn't changed that much. We're just using Zoom and Teams and Slack where applicable.
Okay.
But that's just us.
Yeah,
our process definitely changed for sure. Go ahead.
No, you can go first.
So our process definitely has changed. We definitely see, going off of Shane, that the 8-hour interview no longer is really feasible for folks. I think they just get pretty tired about 4 hours in, and there's all kinds of different issues that can arise as far as technology and your connection. So with that, we're splitting it to at least 2 days, 4 hours apiece. We do have 2 interviewers per each interview to make sure that we have a lead and a shadow. I think that's super good for our company because it gives us 2 perspectives on a candidate, not just one. So that's definitely something that's super helpful in my opinion. And we're trying to be pretty flexible with our candidates now, since we're interviewing in different time zones, and some folks are even overseas. We're trying to schedule them for different times of the day. We used to have a set schedule starting at 8 o'clock in the morning and staying all the way up till 5. Well, that's different now because we have to accommodate those folks.
Yep. Jane?
Yeah, so for us, our process really hasn't changed, but again, so Tarvos Talent is more of a recruiting partner for companies. So we instead of meeting people in person, we're doing it over Zoom. Instead of seeing our clients, we're doing it over like a Zoom or a video conference. And then the processes that we're setting up with our clients are the Zoom interviews versus the in-persons. So it's really the main thing that shifted has been just moving to the Zoom. We are trying to get whoever needs to be in the interview on the Zooms so that they can have the multiple perspectives, but also make sure that we're keeping, the hiring process streamlined and moving forward as well, because being able to, kind of keep to I don't want to say keep to a schedule, but, kind of get your interviews done as close together as possible allows for the decisions to be able to be made quickly and efficiently. And, the people that you want are the people that you wind up getting because they're not already swallowed up by somebody else, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing to keep in mind. Everything that we're doing to try to bubble up these primo unicorn kind of candidates, every other organization out there is doing the same thing. So once you find that person, now the clock is ticking, because there's probably another group out there somewhere doing interviews with the same candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know all of us.
The candidates can do more interviews in a day now.
Yeah, because there's no travel time, right?
Right.
I know every single one of us have stories about that just perfect candidate that we didn't get the offer letter to in time, right? So.
And the opportunities, talking about some myths out there, the tech environment's still great. The Austin unemployment rate is still low. The amount of opportunities that people can have, because so many companies like Indeed have gone remote forever, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much more. There's so much more out there in certain degrees to where that's some of the stuff we're up against. And even when you're looking at hiring someone on board, some of the challenges that are out there right now is that it is still a good market, despite everything, which is so fortunate for us. It is a situation where there's some individuals who don't want to go on site ever again, or they do want that on site piece, and depending upon what your company is offering, that could weed people one direction or another. So you're making your pool smaller and smaller. And then the third piece is now granted, when you're talking about Agile, you want people who can experiment and take risks and all those things. But there's some people out there that they're thinking, I'm in the middle of a pandemic. There's no way I'm making a job move right now or a career move right now. So there's this shrinking of the talent pool that's going on as well. Even though there are layoffs happening and unfortunately companies
normal
have to scale
churn
back. Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't know about anybody else, but in no longer going into the office, my commute has gone. I'm no longer on I-35 behind a liquid fuel tanker. I now have to navigate a 19-year-old Beagle Lab mix and getting him out into the backyard. That's my commute now, right? So that's good. All right, we are just about at the top of the hour. We're 2/3 of the way through this. So let me ask one more interviewing question, and then let's go ahead and move into the last two portions here. 2020 brought a lot of change to everybody on the globe. With regard to hiring Agilists in 2021, what would each of you predict is the biggest new change that we're going to have to wrap our head around? I see Marta leaning back going, oh my God, this is a tough one. Yeah, softball questions are over.
So I would say that it's no longer organizations seeking people who can do agile things, but it's organizations seeking to hire people that fit the culture of agility in terms of being able to be adaptable, learn fast, flex, and collaborate well, right? So I think we've finally tipped in terms of agile being something that just individual contributors do. And an agile way of thinking, lean mindset, is how we need to run our business in order to survive and thrive.
Okay, good.
This is not a slight on the people that haven't been actively working, whether they were downsized or not, but I think that there's a lot of value to the people that have adapted to this and have kept the fact that you're still here and you're still doing this thing, it speaks a lot, right? Whether you're a scrum master or a product owner, and your teams you haven't seen your team in 6 months or almost a year now, I think that the fact that, you still have the drive to go do it still says a lot. I think that we have to be cautious of people who are suffering from Zoom exhaustion. I think that's a real thing. I think that some people are better in face-to-face and around a water cooler than they are on a scheduled Zoom meeting. And so, you kind of want to make sure that those people aren't jumping ship for the wrong reasons, because it's going to be the same thing over here too. We're going to be remote as well. So the things that you might not like about your current place might not be that much different here, because we're all in this new way of working. But the fact that you're still here speaks a lot. And so I think that there's some equity in the fact that you've persevered through this change and you're still doing the thing that you love doing. So that's just my little piece.
Nice.
I think there's a piece of it too where maybe, in making commitments and, setting the pace for your team, I think that could be a challenge, because I think, what happened this year may have been, okay, we're moving to remote. There's this, okay, let's get adapted to remote. There were some people who were handling being remote, being a parent, being a teacher all at the same time. And then there was others where they had no roommates, they had no coworkers. So they were able to put their heads down and work the whole day. And I think the pacing may be something to, or velocity maybe is the better term, or a more agile term. Whether you're a scrum master or a product owner or an engineer on the team, estimating how much work you're going to cover, or how many stories you're going to cover that sprint, I think that could be something of a challenge, as some of the kids go back to school, as some people stay remote, as some companies go back into the offices. What does that look like? So.
Okay.
I think the biggest challenge for me as a recruiter is to try to sell this new environment to these folks, because it is different. A lot of Agile folks, they thrive on the interpersonal communication, seeing each other in person, running things. And like Shane said, it's going to be the same thing in maybe a different thing, but in a very similar environment. We're looking at Zoom. We're looking at, establishing those relationships, cultivating, sustaining those relationships via this particular tool. Can you handle it?
Okay. Good. Yeah, really good input. Almost everything has changed, at least a little bit. Some things are still very, very similar. We still need to we still need to give good value for the money that the organizations are paying us for our skill sets. We still need to play nice with other people in the organization where it's applicable, right? But a lot of stuff, especially how we communicate, has already or will be changing. So let me ask one more question here, because we are talking so heavily about communication, and this one I'm just going to completely ad-lib here. Conway's Law says that organizations tend to build product that reflects their internal communication structure. Okay, if you've got an organization that is strictly hierarchical in its communication, and people are not encouraged or not allowed to break that hierarchy for communication, the product that group puts out will reflect that in its actual, in the code itself, in the product itself. Do we think that this remote communication is going to start having direct impact in the product that we produce?
Well, Lee, I think like anytime we talk about Agile transformation, right, it's typically a big spotlight. We shine on all the problems that have been in the organization historically, because as we try to move faster, the pain becomes more severe and something that's easy to recognize. And then when you compound that with the fact that we're trying to also do things online where we can't just jump in a cube together and try and figure out our messy architecture, I mean, the pain becomes even more real. And I think you're absolutely right. If you look at the operational structure, the organizational architecture, the business processes, and the underlying technology of most large enterprises, especially those that have grown by acquisition, they're a mess, right? You can't do anything without breaking something because of the communication barriers, because of our inability to agree. Good example would be if you think of an HRIS. I've seen in a lot of enterprises where our recruiting platform, our employee data management platform, and many other things are just a hodgepodge of different systems, because even though there's one system that can solve the entire equation, different people have different opinions, so we just try and mash it all together.
Gotcha.
I think as we try to move faster and put the customer at the center of our ecosystem, we're not going to have a choice but to start streamlining. When you talk about, embracing a lean mindset, the tenet that most people are familiar with are eliminate all waste in the system. So bottlenecks are everywhere, waste is everywhere. And then the other component to that is, with respect to the customer, is don't make them wait. So when we talk about restructuring ourselves and we talk about getting better, we've got to start solving all of those problems. And when you talk about getting to the heart of agility and enterprise lean philosophies, that's it. Let's clean up our mess. Let's be efficient. Let's not make our customers wait. And let's deliver the highest value things in the shortest amount of time possible. And if something's in our way, get it out.
Okay.
I've kind of already noticed that. I don't know if this is happening at your all's organizations, but like prior to COVID, we had private Slack rooms or private team rooms just for your teams. And what I'm seeing is that those rooms, and this is just an analogy of actually what's happening, is they're getting bigger. I'm inviting project managers and product managers into these team rooms. We have more open rooms where it's PMs and SMs talking together than ever before. So I think that it's for lack of a better word, knocking down the room silos has been a big thing for us in our organization. Is that the rooms are just getting bigger, and it's getting the right level of conversation. Sometimes they get a little too chatty, but I'd rather the rooms be leaning towards too chatty than not chatty enough.
Sure.
And then what we've seen is instead of paying attention in 7 or 8 different rooms, you're really just paying attention to this 1 or 2 really big rooms. And keeping up to date with everything. Sure, there might be a project manager talking about something that a customer is dealing with that's not directly impacted by you, but you're subconsciously picking those things up.
So
you're still reading it.
You've basically defined a virtual cross-functional team or room.
Yeah, it's basically knocking down the silos.
Cool.
We used to have the silos so we could go get in each other's business and talk about code reviews or whatnot, and we still have those code review kind of channels, but like the conversations have grown outside of the team now, and I think it's a good thing. And I think that,
I think so too.
Avoiding the private rooms. We've gone from having majority private rooms and having only a handful of public rooms has changed to a lot more public rooms than private.
Okay, excellent. Jane, Marta, inputs? Okay, not a problem.
And so I don't think I have anything specific. So.
No worries. Okay, let's talk about welcome aboard. Now that we have our perfect Agile candidate is now wearing the company logo and drinking out of logo mugs, et cetera, et cetera. First day, week, month on the job for an Agile candidate, what's the most important onboarding event that that we as managers need to make sure is happening for them?
Lee, is it appropriate if I jump around and act like a fool for a minute?
Go for it.
Okay,
I double dog dare you.
In my head, I am.
Okay.
Oh, and so many people screw up pre-day one and day one. If you want to turn a new hire off and risk them not even showing up, don't nail pre-day and day one. So pre-day is all the things that happen after you say I do, before you get there, all the compliance stuff, all that stuff. That shouldn't be miserable. It shouldn't be a heavy lift. It shouldn't be broken. It should be seamless. And one of the things that I'm proposing and some of the work that I'm doing is that reestablishing the HR value prop from existing to protect the enterprise from its people to existing to assure an optimum employee experience from hire to retire. Pre-day one and day one are the two of the most important days in an employee's life cycle with an organization. You talk about wearing the company logo. How about on day one, you have a place for the person to sit? How about you have a computer provision ready for them to go? How about you have somebody there ready to meet them when they arrive? Maybe you give them a company t-shirt, make them feel welcome, make them feel as though they've joined someplace special. Too many organizations blow that opportunity entirely.
And we used to take the in-person for granted. Like when a new guy or a new girl starts at a job, usually that first day is, I'm going to walk you around. I'm going to introduce you to everybody face to face, and you're going to, get to know what they do and how they do it in a virtual environment that's practically impossible to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of riffing off what Adam said, the swag bag, it might seem simple, but get the swag bag and the laptop right.
Yeah.
And have it be there day one, right? There's nothing worse than, hey, I'm starting my job today and I don't have a laptop. Okay, I can use my own machine, which is fine. Probably violate some HR rules and some security rules. Okay, and then I am using my personal computer, and now I can't get into Jira because my license isn't set up.
Yeah.
It's all those kind of it's the onboarding, pre-boarding. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Is like it might mean that their start date's pushed out another day or two so you can get it right. There's no reason to rush them in for a subpar experience. If it takes an extra day or two because you're trying to get hardware from 2 different cities or whatever, then give yourself the time maybe. But I agree with the whole onboarding swag bag, get it right.
Yeah.
To me, the biggest thing is to provide them with actually list of things. Things are different. Everything is remote. This is not a situation where somebody just can get off their chair and ask somebody next to them or go downstairs and talk to the ID folks, right? So if they are running through some issues and problems, who they can actually turn into. What I like to do in my practice, I like to set up a buddy system where this new hire for the next 30, 60 days is assigned a buddy who actually wants to do this particular role, help this person around. So every time I'm looking for something, instead of trying to figure this out on, internal site and, reach out to 10, 15 people for the answer, I have that one person I can turn out to and say, hey, this is what I'm facing today. Can you help me?
Yeah, because
I have a funny feeling that
your
organization nails day one. I don't know why. Just my experience in Austin and any experience I've had with Indeed as an enterprise, I just have a feeling you guys kill day one. Like, do a really good job.
I mean, I'm sitting here in a sales seat, okay? But as a recruiter, I mean, it is incredible how much attention is given, how much swag, how much care to these folks when they start. I mean, I got an offer with Indeed, and a week prior to me starting with the company, I get this box that I wasn't expecting at all. And it's the box with swag. And I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
It's a surprise. I have all these fun gadgets that I can use around the house or, while walking, driving my car, running, all this fun stuff. It just makes you feel special. And the fact that there's someone that's, helping you out. I'm throwing something in here that's not really related, but the biggest eye opener for me, how great the company was, and you guys are going to laugh at me because we're all in IT, is the fact that they have a help desk downstairs and there's 6 engineers sitting ready to help me. I don't need to put a ticket in.
Wait, you mean a help desk that's actually helpful? What? No way. Say it isn't so.
I don't have to submit a ticket. I don't need to ask 5,000 people around me how to fix my issue. They're there to help you on the spot. I mean,
first impressions. Yeah, it's all about that first impression.
There's been people that have been out of work. If this is their first job after 6 months, they're apprehensive. They're unsure. I haven't worked since I was in face to face. This whole new remote thing might be really new to me, and so going back to the swag bag and the onboarding. Make sure that their laptop works. Make sure that it's just the little things. It's attention to detail, and in most cases, you've got 2 weeks to prep because most people give a 2-week notice before they change jobs. So you've got 2 weeks to get it right. I've got a guy that we onboarded here recently where they shipped him his laptop, but they didn't send him a charger. It's like, come on, guys, come on.
All right, you have 6 hours of work at most that we can let you do, and then you're done, okay?
Right. Get all the help you need in 6 hours.
Was charged ahead of time.
Assuming, right. Okay, so let's flip the script, because everything up to this point in this segment has been, hey, organization, how can we crush the first week of a new hire engagement? So let's flip the point of view here. What are the first week activities that you're looking for in the candidate that tells you that was probably the right hire decision?
I like to see initiative. I like to take a little bit of charge from day one. So these are the folks that I have on my team that I like to set up 30-minute intros this week. And these are the tools that I'd like to use in my work. What's the access to them? Those types of things.
I would say curiosity too, right? So we all come in with a set of experiences, and the new person's obviously going to have experiences that make them valuable. But before you start breaking the way things are done, you should seek to understand the social network, the structure, the history of the people on your team before you inadvertently maybe offend somebody, or maybe get too ambitious and break things in a non-constructive way.
I'd like to see how many
Done that.
one-on-ones they set up. So usually if you're hiring a product owner or a scrum master, the empathy piece and understanding how the business works, I like to see how many one-on-ones they're setting up with people on the team. Like within the first couple of weeks, if you're a brand new scrum master, you should probably sit down with your product owner in that first week and kind of, have a lunch, or, don't have an agenda, just get to know that person. Ask them what's working, what's not working. Where do you see my role helping you out? Or is there anything right now that, so I think it's the social aspect, especially in this remote world of, how confident are they of reaching out and scheduling a meeting with somebody they don't know?
So that's all
now,
communication skills, 100%.
Right. But if they're sitting there waiting to be told, waiting for the invite to stand up, that sends me the wrong thing. Like I want them to be asking, hey, what time's retro? What time's stand up? What time's our demo? What events do I need to be on? That buddy system thing, we don't have that. And I think that's something I'm going to steal myself from this, is that I think the buddy system is a great idea. And I don't think it should be a manager.
It's not.
Peer.
Okay. Right. It's a peer. Okay.
And Shane, someone that actually wants to do the job. That's another big component.
Ooh.
Right. And you've got these social guys that and gals that just love meeting people. So, it's probably one of those, they're servant leaders by nature, and they like talking to people, and they like it, they like being helpful. I don't know if you guys have ever taken the insights course where they have the building blocks, the red, yellow, green building blocks. So these are like your yellows and your greens. Get those people involved.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We've got about 15 minutes left. Jane, did you have something else? Were you about ready to jump in? I'm sorry.
Initiative, communication, asking questions, all those good things. So.
Okay. My apologies. I didn't mean to step on you there. Okay. So we've got time for just a couple more. So I want to wrap things up. And one of the things that, Adam, if you could drop the PDF book into this slide, you should be able to on Miro, or send it to me and I can send it out, whichever.
I'm still waiting for final approval from the Amazon store. So as soon as that's done, I will do that. Perfect.
Okay. What I have right here, and this is, I've always thought this was kind of interesting. A handful of years ago, the Government Accounting Office mandated that if you're a government or military entity and you're doing a project that is software oriented, that project will be agile unless you can prove a reason why it shouldn't be. Well, a couple of years back in 2018, our government came up with the Detecting Agile BS Guide. This is an actual real government document that talks about what you should be looking for when people are trying to BS you about their agility. Okay, I always like bringing this up here because inevitably people are shocked when they realize that this is a real thing, and it totally is. So with this in mind, what is some of the BS about hiring for agility that you see out there in the marketplace, either in our roles as hiring managers or as consultants, coaches, whatever? What are the things that you see that are just like, no, this is BS. This is not how it works in real life?
I think that, okay, there's just too much silence there, so I'm going to jump in. I think that there's something that's always been something I've pushed for is attendance at demo. And this is more of those, you've got to be willing to stand up there in front of the CEO and demo the thing you just built. I mean, that's our primary measurement of success. And if you're not having successful end-to-end demos, that's an indication of so many other things are going wrong in your company. If you can't get together and demo the entire thing on what you're going to deliver to the clients before you deliver to the clients, or what you've already delivered to the clients, I think that's a huge barometer of how things are going. And so if they're not doing demos, they're not doing Agile.
Okay.
Maybe that's too heavy-handed, but that's just me.
So I'll go back to the relentless improvement perspective, Lee. So there's a philosophical Agile, and then there's kind of the way that most organizations embrace their agility to becoming Agile. In my mind, there's no ones and zeros. There's not, you do these things, therefore you are, and you don't do these things, therefore you're not, right? Your goal should be to always put the customer at the center of your ecosystem, to work on delivering value faster, to work on eliminating quality issues to the best of your ability, and to focus on getting better at building trust, transparency, and open, honest communication today than you were able to do it yesterday. Without really kind of moving away and I guess back into the old patterns for working, which were established to control variability in a production line. So when we talk about agility, again, it's not, do you do these things perfectly? It's, do you understand the reasons that Agile came to be a thing, why the manifesto was written? IT was being disrupted with the birth of the internet. So we have to start doing things different. In 2021, everything's being disrupted from everywhere. And those same philosophies that applied to technology in 2001 will help any business anywhere be better and be more competitive today. So really operating from that philosophy and those mental guardrails, I think that's it. Either you get that we need to be more customer centristic, we need to be resilient and adaptable to change, and move forward with this trust, transparency, and open, honest communication in the organization. And if you're doing that, you're well on your path to agility.
Agreed. In all of my coaching engagements or my classes, I always tell people, don't look at it as a binary switch. You either are or not agile. That's BS. There is no such thing. Look at it like a scale with waterfall or determined work over here and agile or empirical work over here. And what you have to figure out for your organization, where's the right spot on this scale to be? Okay. There are some businesses and some organizations and some markets that demand that you're way over here on the agility scale. But then there's other jobs, other work that can use a little bit more of the rigor of a definition of a waterfall approach. Where do you want your career? Where do you want your culture to go? That's always my take on it. Anyone else? Other agile BS?
For me, I think from the candidate perspective, also team perspective, anytime I hear that somebody just has it down, we're good, we're perfect. Like
when somebody says what?
We're agile, we're good, we're perfect, we don't need any help, we know what's going on. Like, this is continuous improvement, continuous change. What are you talking about? And anybody that leads with that, huge flag for me.
Yeah. Anybody who calls themselves an agile expert, really, okay.
It's like, we're doing sprints, aren't we, Agile?
Kind of on the opposite perspective is when someone sits there and says, well, that's not Agile. You can't do that. That's not Agile. I mean, you go back to the metaphor of the Agile police, right? As long as you're working at getting better and what you're doing is not like blatantly, against trust, transparency, and communication, it's probably an experiment worth running. Right.
As long as you're not breaking the underlying principles and values that the previous practice had supported, I don't care what the practice is. Let's run an experiment and figure it out. But you cannot sacrifice your values and principles in order to go run that experiment. Okay. All right. I do want to leave everybody just a couple of minutes to, we got about 7 minutes left. Panelists, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you very, very much. No fisticuffs broke out. I'm very, very happy for that. And I think that we had some really good stuff. Would each of you like to take a couple of minutes and just plug your latest initiative or your company or whatever real quick?
Sure. I guess I'll go first. So I would encourage anybody that is interested in learning some things and maybe breaking some preconceived notions to navigate over to the scaledagileFramework.com. Take a look at it as a big old toolbox. And, aside from the mindset, values, and principles, I mean, really, there's a lot of flexibility in there. Understanding how the various elements work, how it's adaptable, how the different tools have different purposes, and there's a different fitness for each purpose. And then again, understanding that the mindset, values, and principles are really the immutable things. There's a ton of things to learn. If you happen to have a scaled agile credential, but you haven't logged into the community platform since you either took your exam or paid your membership fee, you're missing out on a whole lot. There's a lot of really good templates, how-to videos, toolkits, as well as access to platforms such as Agility Health Radar and, oh goodness.
The DevOps Health Radar is there as well.
Yep. And so as a member, you have access to those platforms. So please log in, check it out. It's so much more than just 3 letters or 2 letters after your name. You know, embrace that continuous learning journey. There's a lot of assets there with more to come.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate your participation today. Who else?
Well, I can definitely go. So
Okay, Marta.
I think if you're looking to make a switch in your career and you're looking for a company that has a tremendous impact on somebody else's life, Indeed is definitely right out there. You know, with the biggest rate of unemployment in world's history, this company is truly doing anything and everything that we possibly can, setting up several new products to make sure that that connector between a job seeker and an employer is there. There are so many new avenues. One of the newest products that we just developed, I think it took us about 4 months to stand it up. It's the video platform interview. We were selling about 200,000 interviews a month. This is something different, and I think way more advanced than Zoom is in interviewing itself. But again, working for a company with tremendous reach. We are in 60 countries, operating in 29 languages and growing. And again, having that impact and helping these folks. I mean, we're now needed more than ever. Definitely super humbling experience for me this year, you know, big eye opener about what this company is doing and how much resources and time development is put into, you know, those products. They're basically a lifeline these days. There's a tremendous amount of folks that lost their jobs or, you know, are in the space where they, you know, no longer are needed or, you know, just looking for a different avenue.
Yeah. Thank you, Marta. Again, participation was great. Enjoyed having the point of view of somebody working for one of the largest employment groups out there, right? Indeed's as big as they come in that particular market. Jane, what about you?
So for me, I'm standing up our IT and engineering practice for Tarvos Talent here in Austin, and I'm working with companies to help streamline the hiring process, get the right talent quickly. And I do have a passion for both finding the talent and retaining the talent. So, you know, that's a huge. That's what I do. So if you're looking to hire this next year, come find me. But also, Lee, you made a comment earlier where you said they got promoted to customer. Yes. And I think it's really important that as a hiring manager or as a leader in an organization, you realize that everyone that applies to your positions is a customer of yours or could be a customer of yours. So you want that process to be you don't want to screw up day one. You don't want to screw up the hiring process. You don't want to screw up once they get there. So that's where, you know, I come into play, because this is something you could delegate. You could delegate a portion of the hiring process to me. Unfortunately, you can't delegate your, you know, actual development to me. Right? You don't want me to, you don't want to delegate too much to me. But the actual, like, that stack of resumes, you should not be getting a stack of resumes. So, Good deal. So that's me.
Okay, thank you again, Jane. Participation is great as always. Shane, you want to close this out, sir?
First, thanks, Lee. And it was nice meeting all you guys too. I think this panel was very diverse, and I liked hearing from the different sides of the coin. So at North Star Solutions Group, northstarsg.com, I'm the Agile practice lead. We have 5 other practices. We have machine learning, social media intelligence, cloud, e-commerce, and then traditional project management, program management. So while I'm representing one fifth of the practice leads, we have a lot of our disciplines in cadence. And so depending on what level you might need just one of our practices, or if you need all 6 things, we can put these things and work together on our side. So whether you've got internal issues you want us to help augment your team with, or you want to delegate and outsource a piece of a project or an entire project to us, North Star can pretty much do it from end to end. And if we don't have the talent, we'll get the talent. And so, thanks again, Lee. I think this was great. And include me again if you do another one of these.
Oh, guaranteed, guaranteed. And to the whole panel, guys, your input was fantastic. It was great watching everybody with the different perspectives. To the folks who participated live, thank you guys for dropping in. The video is going to be going up on my YouTube channel, probably all the panelists. I hope you guys, it's suitable and you guys can retweet it or reblog it, whichever. Again, my name is Lee Allison. I am the CEO of Allison Agile. We are Central and South Texas' original SAFE partner. Other people have followed through that door, but we were the very first ones to get into it. And we love to do training. We love to do implementations. If there's anything that we can do to help you become more agile than you currently are, wherever you are on that slider that I talked about, if you don't have that metric dialed in, give us a call. We're happy to have some consultation and possibly get you to a position where you and your people can push even further into the market than you are already and be happier and better supported while you're doing it. Those things are critical. All right. Happy holidays to everybody. Please be very, very safe. Take good care of the people around you and yourself, and reach out to myself or any of the panelists if we can do anything for you. Folks, thank you very much. Y'all have a good day.